Hello, great people. I'm Reggie Nance, Associate State Director with AARP New York. We are so pleased to be collaborating with the Empire Report for this podcast on the urgent need to address the utility arrears crisis in New York State. More than 1 million New York households are behind on their electric and gas bills to the tune of more than $1 billion, with many of those customers falling behind during the COVID-19 pandemic. But the state's moratorium on utility shutoffs has expired, putting millions of New Yorkers at risk of losing their lights, heat, and hot water right now. Adding to the trouble, rising energy prices have sent electric, gas, and home heating oil bills skyrocketing this winter. The bottom line, New York is facing a utility arrears crisis, and leaders in Albany need to act this week to ensure millions of New Yorkers can keep the lights on. To discuss the needed solutions, I'm joined today by Bill Ferris, Senior Legislative Representative for AARP New York, Richard Berkeley, Executive Director of the Public Utility Law Project, also known as PULP, and Lori Wheelock, PULP's Deputy General Counsel and Deputy Director. First, Bill, can you start by telling us more about the extent of the crisis? How bad are these numbers?
Well, Reggie, thank you, and thank you to my colleagues at PULP, Richard and Lori. The numbers are not good, Reggie, and I think you said it in your introduction that the fear here of all these numbers that we'll go over is terminations. We do not want people terminated wholesale in the state, and that is the fear that drives the advocacy here. That's what the fear is that the legislature will address and the governor. But to go over the numbers, as you said, there's 1.3 million households in the state of New York who are 60 days behind on their bill to the tune of $1.7 billion. And that just on its face, in our opinion, is a crisis. We knew that arrears was bad before COVID. COVID just made this arrears problem into a crisis that absolutely needs to be addressed in the next couple of days. So if you break those numbers down even more, the 1.3 million people, the $1.7 billion that is owed, it is calculated that 1 out of 5 people in this state are behind on the utility bill. That is completely unacceptable to ARP. It just screams of we need to solve this problem. If you look at these numbers from the major utilities in the state of New York, where most people live in this state, if you look at the Con Ed service territory, which is the 5 boroughs, there's over 400,000 people 60 days behind on their utility bill to the tune of $840 million. You look at National Grid, big upstate utility, they have over 200,000 people in arrears to the tune of $350 million. You look at Long Island, the gas and electric service, you have over 160,000 households to the tune of over $200 million behind on their bill. Those are the numbers. It's of great concern from ARP's perspective, and I believe it's shared by our friends at PULP. We're very concerned about the low to moderate income people, the middle class people, the people who get up every day and work and who are retired, living on Social Security. How can they afford their bills now, and how can they afford the bills in the future if they're already behind? And so it's how does the state move forward with so much debt with 1 out of 5 people owing money? And so those are the numbers. Those are very troubling numbers. And I believe Lori is going to talk about how this translates down into a household here in New York. So those are the numbers. Not good, Reggie.
And thank you, Bill, for helping to frame this discussion and setting up the numbers. And you mentioned Lori. And Lori, my next question is, in fact, for you, is that you represent customers struggling with utility bills and facing shutoffs. What's the impact when someone falls behind, Lori?
Thank you, Reggie. So we've seen people falling behind from the pandemic, and now with the recent bill surges, some people are seeing their bills 2 to 3 times higher than they were last year. And that's a tremendous amount of financial and emotional strain on people. Along with the large bills, because a lot of the COVID-19 pandemic protections that were put in place have now sunsetted, people are also getting hit with late fees. And so, just some information we wanted to share with everyone about what your utility rates are when it comes to electric and gas. The companies can't just shut you off without any notice. Actually, most action can't even occur until you're at least 35 days behind on your bill. The utility has to reach out and notify you that you haven't paid. And there are steps that you can take proactively. The first is that we encourage people to pay what you can when you can. Just because a large bill arrives, contact your utility, pay what you can. If you can do it on a monthly basis and stay in that rhythm, that's great. Do whatever you can to just keep the payments in place, maybe lower them or adjust them to what you can pay that month. But then, second, talk to your utility. Tell them you need more time. You can explain to them what's been going on. And if you get a termination notice, actually ask, say, is there a date scheduled? And if so, when? The third step is you can apply for financial assistance. There's some really great programs out there right now. The Home Energy Assistance Program is open until April 29th and is a great way to get a grant to help lower your heating bill. If you applied for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, ERAP, back in the fall, there is a utility component to that funding. And so you can contact your Human Resources Administration or Department of Social Services upstate and ask them for a status update on your ERAP application. If you applied for RAS, the Arrears, regular arrears supplement, before March 15th, you should also contact your local Human Resources Administration or Department of Social Services just to get another status update on when you might hear about approval. After financial assistance, you can also talk to your utility about a deferred payment agreement, which is an ability to pay back what you owe over time and have it financially tailored to your financial situation. So those are just a couple of steps that we like to share with everyone on how you can take control of your energy bills and protect yourself from having a service termination.
Thank you, Lori, for offering us some means for people to deal with the situation should they find themselves in the middle of this arrears crisis. Richard and Bill, the state budget is due this Friday. What should the governor and the legislature do to address this arrears crisis? Richard, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Reggie. And a couple of things. First, Pulp and ARP had asked together for $1.25 billion in the state budget, with the idea that that would pay off most, if not all, of the arrears that have accrued to New York's consumers between February of 2020 and now. And the final number in the budget is up to whatever happens in the last minutes. There are a lot of needs, and there are a lot of compelling needs for vulnerable New Yorkers. But putting money in the budget is the first thing, because that needs to try and buy down the arrears that consumers are suffering from right now. The second thing is that we also asked for a reallocation of sales tax monies up to about $200 million, and that is for the non-energy utilities, which are also hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in arrears. We just don't know that number because they don't report. The last piece is that Pulp and ARP, the Department of Public Service, the utilities, and a number of other stakeholders will get together after the budget is done and come up with programs to make it possible for all of the households that are in arrears right now to work their way out of them as efficiently and quickly as possible, and with averting the most harm possible in the state. To be really clear, if we don't get this right, our communities will not recover from COVID for at least a decade. This is a lot worse than the Great Recession. It took more than 10 years for that recovery to reach down into communities of color. We can't do that again.
Bill Ferris, do you have anything to add about the state budget?
Yes, thank you, Reggie. And I agree with what Richard said. And what ARP is looking for also is we really need the governor to come to the table. The New York State Senate in their one House budget proposal put about $400 million on the table. If you look at the Assembly one House budget proposal, the Assembly put $500 million on the table. We need the governor now to come to the table literally in the next 4 to 5 days and put resources on the table, and they all need to come together to solve this problem. Because if we don't solve this problem, as Richard said, this issue is going to be with us for many, many years in the future. And ARP doesn't understand how that can work out in our economy, how it can work out with household finances. And we need to do something now. We need to stop these terminations from happening. Usually when they do happen is in the spring, and there needs to be a solution now and not later.
For our viewers who are watching, Bill, how can they raise their voices about this arrears situation?
Sure. And you know, Reggie, one of the great strengths of ARP is our membership. The staff in New York does everything we can to get our membership involved in citizen lobbying and be active in the legislative process here in Albany. So one thing we're doing right now is we're encouraging our members to call the governor, because the Senate spoke with their one House bill, the Assembly spoke with their one House bill. So we need to really get the governor's attention. And we think things are moving along in that direction, but we want our members to call the governor. And the number that we're asking them to call is 518-474-8390. And we want them to also hit button 3 to be connected and leave your message for the governor. It's very simple. The governor needs to come to the table. We need to solve the arrears crisis.
Bill, say that number one more time.
518-474-8390.
Thank you. And Richard and Laurie, you've touched upon this to some degree, but I really want to reiterate this, is when people are struggling with arrears, where can they turn for help? Richard, if you would add your voice to that question too as well.
Sure. We've been around for 40 years. We were actually created in the last energy crisis, and we continue to work with low-income and low-fixed-income New Yorkers when they have a utility crisis. You can call us at our statewide hotline, 877-669-2572. If you are low income, we will provide assistance to you for free.
Thank you, Richard. Laurie, anything to add?
You can also email us. So if it's late at night and you have concerns, you can also reach us at info, I-N-F-O, at utilityproject.org. So info@utilityproject.org, and our organization will get back to you and we'll help you navigate through this whole process so that you can reach a good resolution for you and your family.
Thank you. And finally, just to close out, I want to thank you all for an insightful conversation. Thank you, Bill Ferris. Thank you, Richard Berkeley and Laurie Wheelock, for joining us here today. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Have a great day.